How you doing, guys? This is Eric from RuleTheWasteland.com and SecretOfTheInternet.com. In case you haven't noticed, my background is a little different. I'm going to be getting a new one. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to be doing like a static background like I had the flag before, or if I'm going to put the green screen and try to put in a new thing every time. Also, you may notice that the video quality looks a little bit better because I did get a new camera, and this one does not have an external microphone, so hopefully the audio won't be too bad, maybe a little echoey, but it shouldn't be too bad, and the video should look a lot better. But I wanted to make a quick video before figuring out the background because I know it's been a while, and I got an email from a viewer who had a quick question, and so I was going to make a video on it instead of just typing a response so more people could get some insight into this as well. So I've taken out some of the personal information, but it says, "Hey Eric, my wife and I live in a 1,100 square foot condo and need to stay here for now. We bought some land in another state and we'll move out there someday soon. For now, there's simply not enough storage space in our condo to store very much and prep supplies. I have a lot of water storage, and self-defense items and things we would need for a short-term 2 to 4 week shit hit the fan event. So my best solution was to rent a 5x5 storage unit where I stock a lot more stuff. 7-minute drive away, storage renters have access from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Of course, if power grid goes down, the place is locked up and I doubt the workers would show up. Then I'd have to jimmy open the outside stair door access and risk getting shot as a looter, I suppose. What do you think of this storage scenario? Can you think of a better one considering our constraints?" So the first thing I would say is I've done a podcast a while back that said about coming up with your prepper mission statement, and to me this is always step number one, because you can come up with all sorts of things you would need and all sorts of various what if scenarios, but if it doesn't match what you're really preparing for, then there's no point in having it. So coming up with what you're really preparing for and writing it down, or at least having an articulable statement that you could say, is very important. So for me, as I've said before, my prepper mission statement is to be prepared to do without any outside systems of support, whether that's a grocery store, electrical company, or whatever, for up to 6 months, 4 to 6 months. So then that lets me know exactly what I do and do not need for that mission statement, because you can look at a lot of different things and say, hey, this would be pretty useful if this happens or if this happens. But if I'm preparing for 4 to 6 months by myself, some of that stuff I don't need. So you could come up with saying, all this hunting, trapping, fishing equipment could be really useful in all sorts of different preparedness scenarios, but not necessarily in the one I am preparing for. So I don't need to stock tons of fishing supplies. I don't need to stock a bunch of animal traps and stuff for tanning hides and things like that, because I'm preparing for 4 to 6 months, you know, without outside support. So I can just store all the food I need for that without having to resort to those type of things. Of course, there could be scenarios where this stuff could be useful, but I'm not preparing for that, and it's up to you whether you want to prepare for those things or not. But if you are, then be honest about what you're really preparing for, and make sure you're actually preparing for that and not just coming up with these one-off, what if scenarios and then buying random stuff that you think is cool or that you think you need. So that's my first recommendation, is come up with exactly what you're really preparing for. Outline the scenario specifically so that you can find out if the things that you have and that you think you need, if you really need for this scenario. On the other hand, obviously, like you said, this thing being 7-minute drive away, that could be up to an hour walk away depending on how far, where you have to go. That's not ideal. So what I would do is focus on which items you're keeping where. Obviously, there's no point in totally getting rid of the storage unit, because you even if you can't get to it, it's no worse than not having it. And in some of the scenarios, you're at least going to be able to get to it, so you might as well have it if it's not a huge extra cost. But I would focus on the mission statement and then focus on which things go where, like I was saying. So the stuff that is absolutely primary, food, water, medical supplies, a little bit of self-defense, start with that stuff in the apartment, and other types of gear and maybe tools and things that would be very useful but are not absolutely necessary for survival. Put that stuff into the storage unit. So there's no point in having your entire apartment filled up with toilet paper and having food in the storage unit. You know what I mean? Toilet paper is obviously useful, but you can survive wiping your ass with a rag. You can't survive without food and water. So start with the stuff that you absolutely need to survive: the water and water purification, the food, self-defense and medicine, and then fill up all the space you have with that, and then move on to the next type of things. And also figure out what kinds of things you're buying based on space, because some things you may think is better for your plan and maybe better for preparedness in general, but if you're working within the constraints of a small space, then you have to make decisions based on that too. So maybe you want to go with more long-term store-bought, freeze, like 1-year supply food type plans, not necessarily freeze-dried, but long-term storage food, as opposed to like canned goods, which will take up a lot of space. So you're going to be making your decision based on compactness. You don't want to go with something like MREs. You're probably going to be more likely to go with something like cans of, number 10 cans of stuff, because it's just going to take up less space. And also look at where you're storing the stuff in your apartment. Don't just go with the conventional storage space and cabinets and everything. Think about stuff like making a coffee table. Instead of having a coffee table, make it out of a few boxes, put a blanket or a tablecloth over it, and board on top of a few boxes. Make that as your coffee table. Look at where your bed is. Can you fit stuff under the bed? Can you make a new bed frame and store stuff in there? You do have a crawl space where you can store things like toilet paper that aren't going to get spoiled or anything like that. If you have a garage at the apartment, you can use some of your space in there. So think creatively with the space about where you're going to put the stuff. And if you have a patio, maybe you can make it under chairs, things like that. There's little nooks and crannies everywhere, but just make sure that you write down where you're putting this stuff so you don't forget it. Have a binder if you can, write down where you put all this stuff. So those are my recommendations. Come up with your prepper mission statement so you really know if this is the stuff that's actually going towards your preparedness goal. Start with the essentials and work your way down until the space is filled with in the apartment, and make your decisions based on space. So some things you may like a little better or a little less, but make your decision based on space, because that's going to be one of your primary constraints right now. And if you have to disregard some things you would like to have, but instead you can save space and save money that'll get you closer to being able to move sooner, then that's a worthwhile thing too. Because remember, it's obviously great to be prepared, but you don't want to sacrifice major plans for your life to do so, especially when you can get to a really solid level of preparedness without doing a ton of crazy things. Like you said, 2 to 4 weeks doesn't sound like a lot to preppers, but a month of preparedness puts you ahead of 99.5% of the population of the United States for sure. So it's definitely great. Don't feel too discouraged if all you have is a solid month of preparedness without any outside support. Because remember, most scenarios, even if they're heinous, are not going to be totally cut off type scenarios. So you're going to have a little bit, maybe be able to get some stuff from the store. Like even in Venezuela and stuff they're seeing right now, there's still access to some resources. So it's best to prepare to where you for a situation where you don't have any resources, because then any resources that you do have will only extend that preparedness. So what you may view as being a 1 month preparedness plan may last 6 months in a real shit hit the fan scenario, because there is little things you can do here and there to extend that. So obviously it's better to be as self-sufficient as possible within reason, but don't let it fuck up your life completely. Let me know if that answered your question. If any of you other guys have any insights on that, you can put them in the comments. Hope that helped out. Check out rulthewasteland.com and secretoftheinternet.com, and I'll talk to you guys later.